Karen Fabiszewski I apologize for butchering, to the position of Administrative Law Judge to the Industrial Accident Reviewing Board for a 6-year term to expire on June 9, 2027. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Mass General Laws 23E, Section 5. And I'm going to introduce the councilors that are here. We have Councilor Jubenville in the corner. I just saw Councilor DePaula. I heard Councilor Hurley online. I see that Christopher Iannella is present as well. Is anybody else here? Am I missing anybody? Okay, that's it. All right. So good. We're going to call your first witness. General Counsel to the Division of Industrial Accident, Kevin O'Leary. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. You're done, right?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Counsel.
Let's try to shove that microphone in his face real quick.
I was told to keep it under 15 minutes. I'm going to do my best.
Not you.
Thank you. Good morning. I come this morning to support Karen Fabiszewski's nomination for appointment as an administrative law judge for the Department of Industrial Accidents. I do so without any reservation, knowing that she is undoubtedly the best candidate for this. I've known Karen for more than just the years that we have worked together, the two of us roaming the halls of the DIA for the last 20-plus years. We've worked together for just about 5 of those years. Serving as general counsel and deputy director at the DIA, I've come to rely on Karen for a great many things. I've never been disappointed in the response that I have received from her. Her work product is always reflective of a thoughtful, reasoned, and dedicated approach to doing a job right. These are some of the very qualities that you would expect from an ALJ. Her institutional knowledge alone would make her the ideal candidate. General counsel, acting assessment manager, and she also served as acting general counsel several years ago prior to my arrival. Most recently, she has been the director of the trust fund since 2014. Her resume speaks for itself. She runs a tight ship in one of our most vital departments, handling oversight of staff, case assignments, and dealing with transactions of more than $54 million annually for injured workers and insurance companies. She handles these tasks seamlessly. While her job performance exceeds at every level, what is also striking to me is her commitment to the mission of the DIA. She is what I refer to as a true believer in our work, and I say that with the best of intentions. She considers how each decision will affect the parties involved, most notably putting herself in the position of an employee who finds him or herself in an unimaginable place, injured, without an insurance company or anyone else to step in and pay benefits, whether it's covering a missing paycheck or paying for treatment. I try not to tell anyone our little secret, but we actually do care. And she often sets the tone for what is the best outcome for all parties. The delicate balance when you're trying to take care of an injured worker, but also serve your client, the trust fund. She does this seemingly without effort, but that's mostly because of how she carries herself. Karen believes in the integrity of the process and in the integrity of our system. She always treats people fairly. She is courteous, even in disagreement, and has the ability to communicate effectively to make her point known. These attributes will serve her well as an ALJ. In addition to her outstanding work at the DIA, she has some wonderful personal traits. She has a great sense of humor and has proven herself a true friend when needed. While some would think it's unrelated to what should be contained in a judicial recommendation, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention her dedication to her son, Jason. Jason's about the same age as one of my sons, even just now, and we have often talked about the challenges associated with raising what we'll call energetic boys. Her love for and her commitment to Jason is something to admire. As many co-workers and friends often do, we've talked about winning the lottery someday. Karen once said that she already won the lottery by having Jason in her life, and it wasn't a throwaway line. She meant it with all of her heart. Adopting a child in and of itself is an admirable and incredibly courageous act. Choose to do it as a single mother is a level that I can't comprehend. Caring for and loving that child the way that Karen loves Jason is nothing short of inspiration. She's an amazing mother. I've had two other attorneys from my team move on to become administrative judges, one of whom you recently sent to the district court. While Omar sits there smiling, I once again find myself advocating for a member of my team, even though just as before, I know that my loss would be the benefit to the DIA. While it will be impossible to replace her, I believe that Karen will be an amazing addition to our judicial team, and she will serve with passion, integrity, and a humble balance. She would be an exemplary administrative law judge, and I commend her to your attention. Questions that anyone has?
Thank you, Kevin. Obviously, your testimony means a great deal to everybody here. Doing a great job down there. I did note that she seemed to have been the acting general counsel just before you took over.
That is, yes.
I assume she left everything in perfect shape for you, so it wasn't
It was a
an
very
easy
easy transition for me coming in.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your testimony. The next witness that we're going to be calling is Judge Yvonne Vieira, retired administrative judge of the Department of Industrial Accidents. Judge, come on up. You know, they're pretty short-handed there. They could use some help. Have you talked to the chief about recall? I do want to acknowledge Chief Judge Omar Hernandez, who's here today as well.
Okay. Kevin's kind of hard to follow. I should have gone first. But my
Judge, do
name
not
is,
forget the law of brevity. I'm kidding, go ahead.
Can she put the mic closer to her? Can you put the mic there again?
sure. Okay, my name is Yvonne Vieira, and it is my pleasure to be here today on behalf of Karen. I was employed by the DIA for 37 years. I retired in November of 2019 as an AJ. I met Karen when she came to work for the DIA in 2001. And at that time, and shortly after she came, about 4 or 5 months later, the general counsel left and they asked me to step in as general counsel, acting general counsel. So I did. So Karen reported directly to me. Thereafter, general counsel was hired and I was made deputy general counsel, and Karen continued to report to me. I oversaw the day-to-day operations of the legal department. So Karen and I have known each other or worked directly with each other from 2001 to 2013. And in working with Karen, when Karen came to the DIA, she didn't have a lot of workers' comp experience, but she certainly had the intelligence, the dedication, and really wanting to be good at what she was doing. And so she was very easy to train, to work with. I knew very quickly that Karen was going to become one of the attorneys that was going to be my most trusted and dedicated. And without a doubt, she has. Karen has the entire workers' comp experience. By that, I mean, she understands that the Workers' Compensation Trust Fund is mainly, its first purpose is to take care of injured workers. Make sure they get their weekly benefits, their medical treatment. The quicker you get them treatment, the chances of recovery are better. All the other benefits that go along with the workers' comp case. But she also knows how to balance that with the other responsibility of making the uninsured employer take up their burden and reimburse the trust fund. And that's a difficult task. It's a lot more difficult than most would realize because most of the employers are small-time employers who don't really have anything. But around 2008, 2009, we decided to consolidate the reimbursement issues because they were kind of getting out of hand. The second injury fund and the COLA cases. And so we wanted to narrow it down to 2 or 3 attorneys that would work solely on those cases. And Karen volunteered. I don't know how much any of you know about the Workers' Compensation Trust Fund or the reimbursement issues. It's overwhelming. It can get really overwhelming. The reimbursement issues, I think, are the most difficult cases that the legal department works on as far as the issues involved in them. And Karen dedicated herself to that. We worked very, very closely. And we created the COLA database, which helped to get COLA reimbursements to insurers quickly because the weights were not fair to insurers at all. It also made it easier in having consistent policy as far as the reimbursement of second injury fund cases. And so Karen and 2 other attorneys were assigned to do that, and they did a fantastic job in putting a lot of policies together and moving the cases along. Karen's dedication to the department, I can remember when it comes around June, like around March, and everybody, advisory council, everybody starts looking at us, okay, how much money you putting out that door? And all those cold cases are piling up and all the second injury cases are piling up. And so that was the impetus of why we decided to consolidate that part of the reimbursements. And Karen would be there with me till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, processing these claims to get them out the door because they had to be paid within that budget period. And that wasn't because they were being neglected. It was because the work in the legal department can be overwhelming when you have one person trying to oversee all the legal cases and the reimbursement issue. Karen, when she went on to receive her master's in public administration at the Harvard School of Government. She was going full-time, but she was also a resource for the DIA legal department because the general counsel hadn't even come in yet. So she was juggling that. She was juggling her schoolwork and a young child. So Karen, as far as her dedication, and once she puts her mind to doing something, there is nothing that is going to stop her. She has an incredible dedication, which she has demonstrated in many, many ways. She has experience in many areas of the workers' compensation law. She has experience with injured workers. She has experience with all the reimbursement issues. She has experience with assessments. She has experience with stop work order hearings. The legal department is really funny because it touches all the way from the time the claim comes in the door, all the way to the time that it's paid and gone. So she has a very well-rounded view of how the entire department works and how they work together. Karen is probably one of the most humble people that I know. She's fair. She's knowledgeable about the law. She's a team player, and she has the ability to get along with all walks of life. Anybody she comes across, she knows how to make it work. In my opinion, Karen would be a fantastic ALJ, and if confirmed, would make us all very proud.
Thank you very much, Judge. We appreciate your testimony. Does anybody have any questions for
I
the
do.
judge? Counselor Devaney?
How nice to see you. You look fantastic. How ridiculous that you had to retire. Now, when did you get appointed?
2013.
Wow. Well, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure to vote.
Thank you.
No, you certainly have high regard for this nominee, and your testimony means a lot. Obviously, the time you took in presenting it tells you that you've presented it from your head and your heart. Is there one, you've seen it quite a bit, is there one case that that stays in your mind about how the nominee handled that case and that you were so impressed?
Um, You know, one that sticks out. I, I quite honestly, off the top of my head, can't think of one that really sticks out, but I know that the claimants, we have one that just recently died, who all feel very badly about because he was a quadriplegic. And Karen would always, those are the people that kind of go away, they're in a nursing home or they're being taken care of by healthcare workers and stuff like that. But I know that myself, I would make it a point to go and visit them in their home, in the nursing home. And whenever Karen got a call that there was a claimant in need, that was her first priority. Dropped everything else and she made sure that these people were taken care of. And there are times when people who are in that state a quadriplegic can't really do anything for themselves. So they build up this frustration, and when they get on the phone, they're screaming at you. And Karen always knew how to maintain that calmness and speak to these people. And I will take care of you.
Thank you. Your testimony means so much. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you,
So good
Judge.
to see you.
I neglected to introduce Counsel Ferrera, Counsel Duff, and Counsel Devaney when they came in, all present as well. Okay, that will complete the witnesses in favor of the nominee. Are there any witnesses in opposition to the nominee? Hearing none, if you'd like to introduce whoever you'd like to introduce and then give your statement, that would be
Thank you, Counselor. Good morning. My name is Karen Fabiszewski, and I'd like to thank the governor and the lieutenant governor for nominating me to the position of administrative law judge at the Department of Industrial Accidents. I'd like to thank the chief legal counsel, Bob Ross. I'd like to also thank the JNC executive director, Lauren Green Petrino, for her guidance throughout this process. Thank you also to Valerie McCarthy, Administrative Secretary at the Governor's Council. Her help has been immense. Thank you to each of the counselors for your consideration of my nomination, with a special thank you to Counselor Kennedy for hosting this proceeding here today. I would also like to thank my brother Stephen, who is here today in person representing my family. Thank you to my son Jason, who's finishing up his last week of third grade. And thank you to my sister-in-law, my brothers-in-law, and my 5 sisters and their children at home who are either watching virtually or will be later on today. I would also like to thank my witnesses that came today, Deputy Director and General Counsel of the Department of Industrial Accidents, Kevin O'Leary, and the Honorable Yvonne Vieira, retired administrative judge. And thank you to Senior Judge Omar Hernandez for attending today. And finally, I'd like to thank the Industrial Accident Board nominating panel for forwarding my nomination to the governor for his consideration. And thank you also to the Workers' Compensation Advisory Council for meeting with me to assess my qualifications. I am honored and humbled to appear before the council this morning to discuss my candidacy. I was born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts, and I lived there for about 45 years until I moved to Swampscott with my 9-year-old son, Jason, where we now live. I'm the 6th of 7 children. My father, Ron, was a teacher at Marblehead High for over 30 years, and my mother, Shirley, worked for Catholic Charities, actually doing home daycare in our home. So we were used to always having a lot of children around growing up. I attended Salem State College on a full scholarship, and immediately upon graduation, I entered Suffolk University Law School, where I graduated in 1995. At that time, there weren't a lot of legal jobs available, so I went back to work at Salem Hospital, where I had worked since high school, and continued in the medical records department. In 1998, I got my first legal job, and that was with the Labor Relations Commission, which is now the Division of Labor Relations. I was a staff attorney, and I investigated unfair labor practice charges and conducted representation hearings to determine bargaining unit compositions. In 2001, I began work at the Department of Industrial Accidents, and where I remain today. As I've discussed with many of you, I've had a long tenure at the department. I've worked as an assistant general counsel, also performing various stints as the acting assessment manager. I've been a hearing officer working with the Office of Investigations and the enforcement part. I briefly served as acting general counsel. I think that the experience that I've had there with working with the different parts of the statute and really getting to understand the legislative purpose, which is to provide the benefits for the injured workers and protect some of our most vulnerable citizens that we have in the Commonwealth, is something that I have worked for. In 2016, I did go back to school and get a master's degree in public administration. And that was through a Bradford Fellowship that was sponsored by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Harvard University. It was a full tuition, full salary opportunity that I'm still remain grateful for to this day. When I returned in 2017, I went back to my job as director of the trust fund, where I remain today. And as director, I work to ensure that injured workers are receiving benefits from the trust fund in a fair, prompt, and accurate manner, and that they have access to reasonable, necessary, and related medical care. I often encounter people on some of the worst days, and I understand that nobody is at the DIA because things are going well. And really, for that reason, I make sure that I'm always compassionate, courteous, and respectful as I work towards resolving any issues that arise. I think Chapter 152 is such an amazing and comprehensive statute when you look at it. It has so many different moving pieces with the Division of Dispute Resolution handling workers' comp dispute cases. It has the Office of Investigations looking at the enforcement part. It has the trust fund, which provides benefits to injured workers who otherwise wouldn't have anything. And I think certainly that's given me a great opportunity to look at the statute as a whole and look at how these pieces all work in a complementary fashion to really carry out the legislative intent, which is to protect and provide for the workers. And I think that my experience, my little over 20 years experience working at the DIA provides me with a great background to be able to work in the role of an administrative law judge and essentially continue what I feel I have been doing 20 years now, is essentially continue to effectuate the purposes of the act. I find it fascinating and rewarding work, and it would be an honor to continue this work by serving in this role. And I thank you for your consideration, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Counselor Iannella.
Yes, thank you very much. Excuse me. Good morning. Good morning to everybody. I had occasion to speak at length with the nominee. I think she's an outstanding candidate. We spoke, I don't know, over a half an hour. And really, I mean, with her credentials and the folks that I spoke to, I should say, who handle cases for insurers and people who represent employees, all came to the same conclusion that she's going to be an outstanding candidate. And when the vote comes up, I want the nominee to know that I'm in her corner, and I'd be more than happy to support her. I do, however, want to say one thing. I do want to acknowledge you indicated that Senior Judge Omar Hernandez, we know he's present here today. What a great job he's doing, an outstanding job. He's been there a few years, and I don't know anyone who has who says a bad word about Judge Omar Hernandez. I just hope someday Judge Hernandez will come before us in the position to be a nominee for the district court. He has the demeanor, he has the attitude, the judgment. He's just great. So I guess for today, I'm supporting the nominee as well as Judge Hernandez. I think they're both great people. And when the vote comes up, I'll be more than happy to support you. Thank you.
Counselor Iannella, I'll move we'll vote for his district court judgeship right now.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Counselor Ferrara.
Hello. Chairman, did you just call me?
Yes, Counselor Ferrara, I called.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have any questions for the nominee. Her and I spoke at length. I think she has extremely great credentials, and she's going to do a fine job on the court. She has my support next week, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Duff.
I really, it's rare that I don't have questions, but I find this nominee's resume just outstanding. To go undergraduate and then to the Kennedy School on full rides is extraordinary. So you clearly are very bright, but you're also very, very hardworking. And I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that. And to thank you for stepping forward for this type of work for the Commonwealth. We need more people. You could probably be making a lot more money doing private practice. So thank you. And I feel terrible saying I don't have questions, but I really don't. Your resume and all the diligence I did on you, it speaks for itself. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor Duff. And we know that you have your mother at home in hospice, and we're all thinking of her today.
Thank you, Counselor. I have hospice here right now, and I'm running around. So forgive me if my screen goes blank because I'm doing about 5 things at once.
Counselor Hurley.
Yes, thank you. Well, after hearing what Councilor Iannella
Counselor
had to
Hurley,
say
could you
about
speak
you,
up? We really can't hear you.
Sorry. After hearing what Councilor Iannella said about you, that's certainly a glowing endorsement. And we spoke, and I was very impressed with you. And I also come from an office that does a tremendous amount of workers' comp. And you got glowing reports, not only from them, but from people down east who practice in the DIA. So I don't really have any questions other than how did you ever do everything you've done and have a child of that age?
We're going to take that as rhetorical. Thank you, Councilor Hurley. Councilor
It was
Jubenville.
Counselor Kennedy.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me what the Industrial Accidents Reviewing Board is.
It is the appellate panel of the Department of Industrial Accidents, and it hears appeals of workers' compensation decisions from administrative judges regarding claims for benefits or discontinuances or any other dispute that may arise.
So you indicated that the Industrial Accident Board was, the purpose of it was to provide compensation and medical care to injured workers?
For the Industrial Accident Board, that's the mission of the agency, to provide fair and prompt compensation and access to medical benefits for injured workers while balancing costs for employers as well.
So I can take it that your decisions on the reviewing board will be done with a fine pencil, pointed pencil on behalf of the injured workers.
I absolutely understand the purpose and intent of the statute, and if confirmed, I will absolutely follow the legislative intent, which is to provide benefits to the workers. It's to protect the workers. No question.
How long was the course at Harvard that you took, the Master in Public Administration? Was that a 2-year course?
It was actually a year. It was an accelerated mid-year course, and it went from July to May.
Yeah, it's a difficult course, very difficult. Probably harder than law school.
It was, especially because I hadn't been in school in like 20 years, and my son was in preschool at the time, and it was very challenging. And the department didn't have a general counsel. I was actually the most recent as the acting, so it was amazing, and I would do it again in a heartbeat if I had the chance.
Well, you don't have to. It's very impressive that you did that at that stage of your career when you really didn't have to.
Thank you.
So I like that. I've received some accolades from Bill Nealon, and by Judge, that recently became Judge Siegel. I happened to see her in Brockton District Court yesterday, and she made a point to come over and spend 25 minutes talking how great you were.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, she had a lot of nice things to say about you. And I do take a lot of confidence in what Councilor Iannella said. He much more familiar with that area than I am, and that means a lot. It means a lot that Judge Hernandez is here on your behalf also, and that Judge Vieira has come in and spoken for you.
I'm very grateful, yes.
So I think you're going to make a wonderful reviewing board. How many people are on that, by the way?
By statute, the panel is 6, but I think it's been operating as 5 for the past several years.
So you'll bring it up to maximum?
No, I'll be the 5th. There's 4 now.
And do you each have your own cases assigned to you, or do you all meet as a unit and talk about it?
I believe it works in panels of 3, and that's and it's a decision that way, working that way.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions, and I think you're going to be splendid for that job.
Thank you,
Councilor
Councilor.
Devaney.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well.
I just want to say that I am so pleased with this appointment, and I'm so pleased for Omar Hernandez because he has been this has been long overdue. He's working shorthanded, and we have all told the governor that we need people. It's a very important board. Now, I just wanted to say that I want to thank you because you are unique. In my 21 years, no one has been given a schedule to come in such a short time. and you did it, and you're amazing. Because you were given 2.5 business days, and you are required to bring into our office in the State House the Governor's Council questionnaire with 20 copies. And on that, it says, it has a statement, you are required to bring this questionnaire completed 8 days before your hearing. Now, we were told Friday afternoon. So that's 2.5 business days. So you can't go back to the future, but you did it and you brought it on the 11th. Good for you. Because I was concerned when we met, not putting a guilt trip on you, but I canceled a doctor's appointment. But anyway, the thing was that I didn't even have your questionnaire when I met with you, but for the hours that we met, I couldn't be more pleased. I mean, to have someone that has been working 20 years there, and I love that you come from from labor relations. That's very close to my heart. I'm very pleased on that. So anyway, you did it. My concern was, how is she going to get in touch with witnesses over the weekend? And not only that, but you had to complete that questionnaire and get it in. You couldn't do Saturday and Sunday, the State House is closed, and you did it. So I want to thank you for that, because that's a lot of pressure, and you're required to fill that questionnaire out and pays a penalty, and I love it. And I love you have no contributions to any politicians. Yay. So I am very impressed. And I can't separate the public life from the private life. And from your roots, your mother, imagine 7 children, and yet she took children. And I mean, she had to be a very compassionate person, and you are, and that's what I look for. And, and even I think about your grandparents. That was the American dream. They worked in a garage, and they eventually owned the garage. That's the American dream. And everything you did, you got a scholarship. I mean, your family couldn't afford, you couldn't afford. And that's how you did it. You did it the old-fashioned way. And to have someone with 20 years experience, I mean, it's just such a pleasure that you were appointed, and I'm so happy you're there. Now, I love your writing. Did a great job with this. And it is interesting. Now I'm going to follow up on my colleague, Councilor Jubenville. I want you to tell the councilors, what's the difference on the different judges that serve on the Industrial Accident Board? Because you're going on the reviewing board. So would you explain that to them?
You mean the difference between the
difference with the responsibilities?
Certainly. So the administrative judges at the Department of Industrial Accidents are charged, they're charged with actually hearing the cases, conducting essentially a trial to hear witnesses, make credibility findings, issue a decision based on the facts and the law. And then if one party is not happy with that decision and wishes to have further review, they can appeal it to the Industrial Accident Reviewing Board, which sits in a panel to review the decisions. And it's certainly, the review is based on whether the decision is arbitrary, capricious, or contrary to law. It's a limited type of review. It certainly doesn't handle credibility findings or anything like that. And after at that point, the Industrial Accident Board, the reviewing panel would issue a decision. So that's the difference.
Thank you. This is the only time I've ever heard that word joinder. It's not, never seen it in 21 years in any other position, but you are a joinder, correct?
Joinder of uninsured employees, that's a word, yes, that we use.
That's a designation.
Yes.
And so I think that that's an important function, and you're so well fitted to do that because this is the mechanism for that employee to get the necessary information for you to get that person what they need. Is that a fair way to say it?
For the trust fund, I think it's critical. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah. I think, lots of times the employer is not being honest. And so you have to represent that person and make sure that they get what they need. Again, I go back to your compassion, and I'd like to give you the opportunity of telling us, and it's not always easy to talk for yourself, but you should. This is your day, and this is the only day that you have come in public to speak for yourself in the process. So I hope you'll do that. I think you are best suited to talk about it yourself, but you have gone beyond to help people, following up to make sure that they got the wheelchair or whatever device that they needed. And they call you back and they thank you. And then you follow up to make sure that it's going well. Do you want to tell us how, all of those things, how it's incorporated in your position?
Well, I think certainly it comes from really recognizing what the trust fund is here to do, which is to provide the benefits for injured workers. That's the basis for all of it. And I think, you and I had discussed several of those cases, and you'd asked me to think about some cases that really have made an impression on me. And there was one case that really stood out, and it was several years ago. There was a claim filed against the trust fund that was assigned to me. And I went down for the claim, and it was an injured worker who was about 20 years old and his mother. And it was essentially, fortunately, a very minor injury in that it just needed a visit to the emergency room and it was resolved. But the bill had never been paid, and it was a $1,300 bill. And this injured worker and his mother had been to the DIA for 3 times. The third time was to see me. The first time they filed a claim against the city because he had been working doing street sweeping on a public street, and the city denied the claim and said it was a state highway. Then he filed a claim against the state. The state had no record of work being done on it. They couldn't find the employer, so he had nowhere else to go. So then he filed a claim against the trust fund. And that case really stuck with me after all these years because honestly, in terms of the cases I was handled, it was one emergency room bill and it was $1,300. It was definitely among the smallest, if not the smallest, that I ever actually handled. But to this worker, it was the most important case. And that always inspired me to keep that in mind, to remember that to every worker, their case is the most important case, and they deserve to be treated compassionately and certainly with empathy as we work to resolve the issues on that. And so the first thing I did was I took the bill and I said, I'm not sure who's responsible for this yet, but I know it's not you. So I'm going to call collections agency and I'm going to call the hospital and tell them to stop contacting you. If there's any issues, you tell them to contact me. And I gave them my number. And then we ultimately ended up paying the bill. And it really, because it bothered me too, that this man and his mother both had been taking off 3 days from work to just get a $1,300 bill paid, and they couldn't do it. And that's something that I remember. The actions on my part were small, but the impact on that man and his family were big. And that's something that I carry with me even after all these years in my approach.
Right. No, I mean, all of us in some ways have gone through so much red tape, and we all wish we had a person like you to be able to intercede for us, and you have. And that's why, I'm so pleased that you applied, and I'm so pleased that you have been chosen. If you weren't, I mean, that would have been so ridiculous because I don't know of anyone that's more qualified to be on the Industrial Accident Board as an administrative law judge on the reviewing board that is so important because you've seen it all, you heard it all, and you know what's needed out there. And not only that, but you've taken the time in your community to volunteer in the school. And that takes time out from your life and with your son. And I really appreciate that. You know, we talked about this pandemic, not an easy time for parents, for mothers, single mothers especially, to try to homeschool children. Because I know I have 4 children, try to get a child to sit there and attend. You're not his teacher. This isn't school. I know. I talk to people, and I want to thank you for all you've done. And I know that even following up, you said, hey, he's not getting enough instruction, and you got a tutor. Good for you. So everything, your personal life, your public life, I can't think of someone more that I want to vote for. I could vote today. So I thank you so much. And I'm especially happy for Omar because I know you've been working with that board for 20 years. Okay, so thank you. It was my pleasure meeting with you. I thank you. It was such a rush. We found a day, and it was such a pleasure to
Thank
spend
you.
time with you.
It's
Thank
all
you.
my pleasure. Thank you,
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you, Councilor Devaney. And I appreciate you filling out the questionnaire as well so quickly, especially where it's not a requirement for industrial accident nominees. It's only for judicial nominees. And we had a conversation about that over the weekend, and you did it anyway. It wasn't necessary, but you did it anyway. Councilor DePaula.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Good morning and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
So when I think about injured workers seeking their just compensation, as you noted, it's their most important day probably being there. And it's not just for them, it's their families too. And so what has most impressed me about learning about your nomination is your empathy for the injured workers and keeping that in your heart and your mind as you are conducting your careful analysis of each case. And I think your experience is exactly tailored to this role, as my counselors have said. This isn't my wheelhouse for practice area, so I had to make some phone calls and inquire. And I also received a few phone calls from people who reassured me again that you would approach the job with an empathy for the injured worker. And not only that, but you have very impressive expertise in the statutory framework that you're. So with that, I'm very happy to support your nomination. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DePaula. I received countless phone calls. First, I have to say that the first person that jumped on was Councilor Ianella, who had incredible things to say about you and the job that you're doing. And we do rely on him when it comes to the Division of Industrial Accident because he's the only one who has any kind of practice up here on this council. So what he says means a lot. He had a lot to say. I've told you some of the people that called me already. I received calls from Mike Occasion, Sean Flaherty, various members of the workers' comp bar. Probably people I would expect would be on the other side of the cases, all of them had incredibly good things to say about you. Steve Falvey, my lifelong friend who grew up in Everett, who's on the advisory board representing labor folks on there. A union guy, not a lawyer, not a somebody who's involved in the practice of workers' compensation. Tremendous things to say about you. And that says a lot because that came from a union where a very prominent union. And of course, Judge Siegel can't say enough good things about you and has for many years. So you have my vote. I think you know how to count. They taught you that at the Kennedy School, right? So I think there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be on the reviewing board. With that, I'm going to close the hearing.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time and consideration.
You.
Are we going to schedule a date for hearing on Sergio? I can't pronounce